Hey everybody, so today we're going to be working on this cute little Sweet November stamp by CC Designs called Tilly. And if you want, you can head over to the store and I'll put a link down in the description box to get this kit or others if this one is already gone. So I have already stamped my image on Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. So let's get started. Okay, let's start by coloring her skin first, and for that I'm going to use E21, E00, and E000. And for the cheeks I'm going to use R20 and R30, and I'm going to start with E21 first. And let's go down here and do her feet. And so I lay down my E21 where I want it to be the darkest, so I'm going to put a little line underneath of her skirt and along the bottom of her foot, and then I'm going to do the same thing for this side. And then I'm going to grab E21 and I'm going to lightly go over the top of that color I just laid down. And this foot's so small, I'm just going to go ahead and fill it all the way in. And again, lightly go over the color you already laid down. And I'm going to fill in that little bitty white patch with E000. And then let's go up and do her hands. So again, I start with E21. I want it to be dark underneath of her sleeve, and then maybe along the back of her hand right here, and the inside of her thumb. And for this fingers, I'm going to get just the bottom part. And again, I'll go to E00. And I'm just lightly brushing over the line that I already laid down. And her hand is so small, I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in. And same with her fingers. Then I'm going to go to her face, and for her face, I want it to be shadowed underneath of her hat. Lay down a line there, and then right here's a little patch. And then underneath of her bun and down her neck. And then I'm going to do just a little bit along her bottom lip and along her chin, and then maybe a little bit underneath of her nose right there. And then I'm going to switch to E00, and I'm going to brush right over the top of that color, lightly blending out that line. And I'll go along the inside of her face right here too, just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to fill in that little white patch with E000. Then I'm going to add a little bit of cheek color with R20. And I'm just going to make a little circle. Right about there, looks pretty good. And then I'm going to take R30 and I'm going to blend just lightly on the edges. So I touch down on my R20 and then flick out away from the R20 with my R30. And then so it doesn't look so patchy, I grab my E00 and I'm going to lightly just flick right over the top of that cheek. And then I'm going to again go over the whole face with E000. Next, let's do her hair, and for that I'm going to use E35, E34, and E33. I'm going to start with E35, and I'm going to add just a little bit to this little curlicue right next to her hat, and same for her little bun. And let's get the top one. And then this curlicue looks like it kind of dips in just a little bit, so I'm going to give that just a little tad right along the line right there. And then here it kind of dips in right here, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of my 35 on the bottom side of that. And then I'm going to switch to 34, and I'm going to add just a little bit on top of this one. And again, I'm brushing down on top of the color I just laid down. lightly brush just a little bit on that line. Flick this one. Let's get a little bit on this side. And then I'm going to switch to 33, and I'm going to fill that the rest of the way in. And you can go back over it with your darkest shade to add a little bit more contrast, so I'm going to go back with E35, and I'm going to add just a little bit dark underneath of her hat brim. Maybe a little bit on this little line where it's supposed to be curving in a little bit. So now let's go do her hat and her dress, and for that I'm going to use R08, R05, and R02, and I'm going to start with R08, and I'm going to start with the bottom side of her hat. And let's do right underneath of where her hat looks like it folds over here. I'm going to do a little bit next to her hair. And then I'm going to grab R05 and fill that in. Then I'll go back to R08. And I want this side of her hat to be darker than this side. So I'm going to start with my R08 over here. And lightly flick up onto my white. And as I'm flicking it, the end of the line towards this end is smaller than when I laid it down over here on this side. Then I'm going to grab R05, and again I touch down on the R08. Lightly flick up. Then I'm going to grab R02, and I'm going to go this way just so I don't color outside the line so much. And the same with this side. Well, this one I think I'll flick this way to begin with and then come back the other way. Got a little bit more space there to work with. Okay, and R05 to R02 is a pretty big jump, so I'm going to go back with my R05, and I'm going to flick some more color on here. And then I'm going to grab my R02 again. And while that's still wet, I'm just going to flick up just a little bit. Come down this way now, so I don't go outside the line so much. Okay, and I'm going to make her hat just a little bit darker, so I'm going to grab R08 again. And I'm just going to add a little bit down here at the bottom. And then we'll go to R05. And then grab my R02. And I'm flicking back towards the darkest color just so I don't go outside of the line. Sometimes I get a little crazy and it's easier for me to sometimes go backwards. I'll flick this way a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Alright, let's go down here and do her dress next. And for that I'm going to start with RO8 again. I'm going to start with her sleeve. And so I want the back side of her sleeve to be darkest. So I'm just going to go right along and make me a nice little line right along her sleeve. And then I want her dress to be dark right next to her sleeve and right next to this little bow. And then she's got a little piece of her sleeve on this side right here that I'm going to put a little bit on. Then I'm going to do RO5, and I'm going to lightly brush over the RO8 and pull that little bit of a line away from that previous line out here into the white space and blend my line. We'll add some to her sleeve. And I'm just going to get lighter and taper it down so it's not so thick up towards the top because her sleeve gets smaller up there. Then I'm going to grab RO2 and I'm going to fill that area left in. Okay, so since there's such a big jump from RO5 to RO2, I'm going to do the tip-to-tip method. So I'm going to grab my package that my stamp is in, and I'm going to take my RO5, and I'm just going to color it. Let me flip it over and do it on the back. I'm just going to color it up here in this little space like this. And then I'm going to grab my RO2, and I'm going to pick up some of that color on the end of my RO2. And then I'm going to flick right on top of her sleeve here where that line is. And soften that huge difference in color a little bit more. And I'm going to add a little bit to her dress right here at the back too. But that'll help even out that line a little bit if it's not blending very well. So let's go down here and work on her skirt. And for her skirt, I'm going to do my darkest color underneath this bow and down right next to her apron. And let's do the underside of her apron here. And then I'm going to go with RO5. And I'm just going to again lay down on top of my RO8. And I'm just going to flick that out and away. And you can go out as far as you want. Down here at the bottom. Back over it a second time because I didn't get that line very good. Okay, and again I'm going to color on my little piece of plastic, and I'm going to grab my RO2 and pick up some of my color on my paper, and then just starting on top of the RO5 I laid down. And you'll notice when your pen starts to run out of ink on it, your extra color there. And you just pick up some more and continue right down this line. Help blend that out just a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to use just my R02 to color in the rest of my white space. See if I can do it without going outside the lines too much. Okay, I'm going to try to blend that line a little bit more. So I'm going to grab some more of my R05 and put it on my little piece of plastic. And grab it with my R02. And let's see what we can do with this line a little bit more. And I'm going to kind of do it in a little swirly motion this time. Help blend it a little bit more. And you can also put your color onto a piece of acetate, an acrylic block, whichever you have available, CD box. This is just what I had sitting here in the video room, so that worked out perfect. Okay, see how much better that looks all blended in there? Okay, so I'm going to get underneath of her skirt right here, and I'm just going to fill that in with the R08. So next, let's go do the band on her hat and the bow on her apron. And for that, I'm going to use YR24, YR23, and Y21. I'm going to start with YR24, and I'm going to do her little hat band first. So I'm just going to add a little bit of dark back here on the back of her head. And I'm going to grab 23. And then Y21. I'm going to go backwards just so I don't color outside the lines. And I'm going to go down here and do her bow. And so again, I'm going to start with YR24. And I want it to be dark right next to her arm. And then this bow, I want it to be dark right here in this little seam. And then this one's got a little kind of curved in place right there. I want to go ahead and get that on both of those. And right next to her dress. And then this bow where it comes out. And then this kind of loops up, so we don't want to get that. But it kind of comes back down a little bit down here, so I'm going to go on this side just a little bit. I'll make this one just a little bit longer there. Then I'm going to grab YR23. And I'm going to add a little bit on top of that. Get this little bow right here. I'm going to do clear around over here and just leave the top part so the sun can shine on it and make it a little bit shinier, get light yellow over there. And get this side, we'll get the bottom of a ribbon. And then Y21. Lightly go over that line. Fill in this white. I'm going to go backwards because I just don't want to go out of the lines. This side of the bow and down that way. And I want to darken up my dark areas a little bit more, so I'm going to grab YR24 and add that back in just a little bit inside these little bows here, maybe. Okay, and I'm liking how that looks, so I'm just going to leave it just like that. Alright, so now let's go do the stick on her rake, and for that I'm going to use E44 and E43. And let's add a little bit of shadow right above her hand, right below her hand. Let's do right above and below this hand. And I think I'll do maybe just a little bit on the back side. Just a tad. So it's kind of a skinny stick, so you want to use just the end of your pen. Then I'm going to grab 42. And again, you're going to put that down on top of your 44. And just color the rest of that in. Then let's do the rake in her shoes, and for that I'm going to use C8, C4, and C6. I'm going to start with C8, and I'm going to add just a little bit to the bottom of each of these little tines on the fork, on our rake right here. And I'm going to get the end right here where there's a little circle. And then for her shoe, I'm going to do just along the sole, just a little bit. She's got very pointy shoes. And then I'm going to grab C6, and I'm going to add up to the top, to where it comes to the top of her rake right here. And then add a little bit to her shoe. And then I'm going to fill it in with CO4. And if you don't have enough room for your CO4 and you only have C6 on your shoes, that's great. It just depends on how small of a line you put down as to how much room you're going to have left to add another color. But those shoes are pretty dinky. Over that little line just a little bit there at the top, a little bit more. Okay, so let's add some grass. And for that, I'm going to use G46, G43, and G40. I'm going to start with G46, and I'm going to put down where I want it to be the darkest. So I want to create a little bit of a shadow underneath each of these little rake tines. So I'm just going to give it a little bit like that under each of those. And then I want it to be dark underneath of her shoe. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit underneath each of these little shoes. Then I'm going to grab 43, and I'm just going to continue adding a little bit on top of that. So I'm going to go right over the top of my 46, and I'm just going to spread it out so I have a little bit more grass. And I'm going to kind of do a little bit on top of her foot here, because grass, I want it to look like it's not just underneath of her foot. I'll get each of these that I put underneath of the rake. I'll make this back one just a little bit longer. And then I'm going to grab G40 and make an even bigger patch of grass. And you can make yours as big or as small as you would like. I just think I will make mine come out just a little bit farther. Get in between these rake things. Maybe come up here past the rake. And I'm going to go away from her leg so that I don't color her leg green. Same with this side. Okay, I like how much of grass I got looking there. So I'm going to go back with my G46, and I want to make my shadow just a little bit darker here underneath of her shoes. So it still looks like she has one. Underneath my rake tines, I'm going to add that back in. Okay, I'm liking how that looks, but I'm going to add a few little streaks of grass to my little area. So I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to hold it straight up and down, and I'm going to do like a little check mark. And I'm going to randomly put some little grass blades wherever you want those to go. But by holding my pen straight up and down and just touching the end of the pen to the paper, it makes it a lot skinnier at the top than it does at the bottom. So I'm going to now grab G43 and I'm going to add some different grass blades. So I'll just skip around here. And you can also go over the grass blades you just put down and put a few extras inside. Add a few random ones out here in the middle of nowhere. I've got one right here. And then finish it off with G40. And again, you can put a few in between some of the grass blades you already put down. Add a few out here in the empty spaces. Depends on what look you like. And G40 is pretty light, so you're not going to see it very well, but it's there. Okay, so that is our grass. I think that looks pretty good. You can add as much or as little as you want. So let's go do her apron now. Alright, so for her apron, you could color her apron to match the bow if you wanted. I've chosen for this kit to do a paper pieced apron. So I've already stamped my image on the piece of yellow checks that's provided, and I'm just going to apply some glue to the back. Move it off my girl so I don't accidentally get glue on her. And I'm just going to dab some glue on my girl's apron. And you could use a quickie glue pen too. I just grabbed this when I was coming in here. And you're just going to set it right onto her apron area. And because it's my liquid glue, I can kind of move it around a little bit until I get it where I want it. Then you're going to press it down like that. That looks pretty good. Okay, so it's got some little flowers down here, so I'm going to color those in with R08. And then I'm going to add a little bit of shadows to her skirt. So I'm going to use W0 and W00. I'm going to start with W0, and I want the front part of her skirt where she's bending over to have the shadows. So I'm just going to lightly brush on the edge of my skirt, or my apron, right along up here underneath of her arm, and maybe a little bit underneath of that bow. And then I'm going to grab W0, and you'll be able to see it a lot better when you're doing it. It's probably pretty hard to see on here because it's pretty light. And I'm just going to lightly feather over that line and blend it out just a little bit more. But it gives it just a little bit more contrast on the front of her skirt. So now let's go and add the clouds. Alright, so for the clouds, I went and grabbed my nonstick craft mat, my cloud template, and you can download this off the side of the blog and print it out and cut it out, or also there's one for your silhouette on there that customer Kim made for us if you want to use your silhouette to cut one out. And I have my Ranger Tumbled Glass Distress Ink. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that. Oh, and I got a sponge dauber for my finger. Okay, so I like to do my clouds from the bottom up. So I usually lay my cloud template somewhere on here towards the bottom. And then I'll pounce my sponge dauber and my ink pad and put my ink pad or my sponge dauber on top of my template, so most of the ink gets on that first. Kind of uses some up before you get out here into the clouds. I'll do a little bit right along. Like that. And then I move my cloud template to a different spot and just continue working my way up until I get to the top. Let's do some on this side. Okay, when I get to her face, I tend to cover up a little bit, with my template so that I try not to paint onto her face. So I'll maybe put it like this so I'm not accidentally brushing blue onto her cheeks. Like that. And then let's do the back side over here. And you just continue to move it around and add clouds until you get to the top. Maybe a little bit over here. Like that. I think that looks pretty good. But see how those beautiful white puffy clouds? Looks good. So now let's put our card together. Okay, so I have all my parts, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue my girl to the matte piece. Mat her down. Then I'm going to glue, whoops, don't lose the butterflies. Move those over here to the side. I'm going to glue this dotted piece to this matte piece. So I got a little glue on the outside here, so let's wipe that off. And I'll stick this down. And then next comes this little piece right here. But I don't want to connect this one to the base yet, but I'm going to put a little piece of tape on the back just so I can see where it goes to hold it temporarily onto the base so that I can get this one, because this one goes all the way out to the outside. So I'm going to attach my red piece. To this one. That. Then I'm going to attach this little dotted one. And that one goes about right here. Okay, then I have my little piece of ribbon, and I want to attach that on here, so I'm going to cut it off because I don't make it go all the way around. To me, it's a waste of ribbon to stick it on the back where you can't see it. So I'm going to go like this, and I've got my trusty Scotch tape. I'm just going to lay it down where I want my ribbon, and I'm going to tape it on the front first so that it can't move around. Okay, and then I'm going to pick this up off of my card. And I'm just going to, first I'm going to make sure it's straight. I'm going to flip it over to the back, and I'm going to tape it down. So that way you're only using the front part of the ribbon and not going clear around the back and wasting that whole section. Like that. Now I'm going to glue this down to the card base. Kind of watching where that red piece is, or pinkish red here, so that it goes clear to the top, like that. Alright, so now let's attach our girl, and I'm going to do some pop dots on her, so I'm going to go ahead and put those on. And remove the back. And I'm going to put her, so a little bit of this little dotty piece sticks out right over here. So just like that. That looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to add a white dot to her cheek, so I've got my Sharpie paint pen. I'm going to shake it, and I'm going with the lid on so I don't make a mess, and then I'm just going to give her a little dot in her cheek. And then for her bow, I went ahead and made my double bow on my Bow Easy already, and I'm just going to attach it to my card. And if you don't know how to use your Bow Easy, I have another tutorial in my list of videos that you can go watch for that. So I'm going to take a glue dot, and I'm going to cheat. So it looks like I tied this bow on the front. I'm going to take my little ribbon right here and kind of scrunch it up and put a glue dot on there to hold it to the front of the card so it like smushes. That way when I put this on, oh, it looks like I need another one. I'm going to go ahead and grab another one. I'm going to do this side too. Just smush it up there a little bit. So it looks like it's bent right here in the middle. I'm going to grab me another glue dot for my bow. And I'm just going to, and I didn't want it to poke up like this onto her face, so I'm going to kind of tilt it a little bit to the bottom, just a little. And then you fluff out your little double bow. And then you can trim these little ribbon parts, the tails, to however long you want those. But you've also got some butterflies that came with your kit this time. So I'm going to attach those, and I did make this paper. I sprayed it with some glimmer spray, and then dried it, and then cut the butterflies out so they're really sparkly. So I'm going to bend my butterflies up, and I'm going to attach glue onto the back, and I'm going to use my liquid glue. And then you're just going to stick those wherever you would like. I kind of push it down with my fingernail in the middle so that the glue can dry there. Touches the paper really good. And let's do one down here floating above her raking. Like that. And then you let that dry for a little bit, and then I poof their wings up a little bit more. So that is Tilly. I hope you liked her, and if you'd like to try a coloring kit, just head over to Heather's Hobby Haven and pick one up, and I'll put a link down in the description. And if you like the video, please hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, that would be great. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.